Judgment Day. Every scholar in history stands in line. Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Ibn Taymiyyah. Centuries of knowledge, lifetimes of wisdom. And then one name gets called. To stand ahead of them all. He's 34, dead from plague. His wife buried. Sons buried. Daughters buried by his own shaking hands. But he died smiling. Why? Because years earlier, the Prophet grabbed his hand and said 3 words. Who is this man? And what secret did the Prophet whisper to him that not even the greatest scholars in history possessed? Before we start, please subscribe to our channel and like the video so we can reach more people. If you're ready, let's begin. Bismillahi Rahmani Rahim. Before the Prophet ever set foot in Medina, there was a boy who made hearts stop. Muadh Ibn Jabal walked through the streets with a bright wheatish complexion that seemed to glow in the Arabian sun, curly hair that framed a face so striking that people forgot what they were saying mid-sentence. But it wasn't vanity that defined him. It was his smile, pearly white teeth that flashed with such genuine warmth that even hardened men softened in his presence. He carried a slight limp, a mark that should have diminished him, but somehow it only added to his magnetism. When he moved through the marketplace, the youth of Medina orbited around him. They wanted to be near him, to hear what he thought, to catch a glimpse of that infectious joy. But there was something restless in Muadh's eyes. The idols of his tribe, Banu Salima, felt hollow to him. The wooden gods his people bowed to couldn't answer prayers, couldn't give guidance, couldn't love him back. He was searching for something real, something that could match the depth of longing in his chest. Then came Mus'ab ibn Umair, the messenger before the messenger. He spoke of one God, of purpose, of a prophet who would soon arrive. Muadh didn't hesitate. At just 18 years old, while his elders clung to tradition, he made his choice. He destroyed his family's idols in secret, whispering the words that would change everything. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. The handsome youth of Medina had found what he was searching for, and he would never let it go. The chief of Banu Salima, Amr ibn al-Jamuh, had a problem. His wooden idol, Manat, kept ending up in the trash. Every morning, he would wake to find his precious deity, the one he prayed to, the one he adorned with jewels and perfumes, lying face down in a pile of garbage and filth. Furious, he would retrieve it, wash it, and place it back on its pedestal with even more reverence. Who dares disrespect my God? He thundered. The next morning, the same thing. The idol, covered in waste, discarded like trash. Muadh and his young friends could barely contain their laughter. Night after night, they snuck into the chief's home and carried out their plan. They weren't trying to be cruel, they were trying to prove a point. If Manat was truly divine, wouldn't it defend itself? Wouldn't it strike them down? Wouldn't it at least stay on its pedestal? One night, Amr had enough. He tied a sword to the idol's hand and stood guard. Let's see them try now, he muttered. But when morning came, the idol was gone again. This time, Muadh had thrown it into a pit alongside a dead dog. The chief stood over the edge, staring at his god, helpless and humiliated. Something broke inside him. The teenagers had shown him what his pride refused to see. If this piece of wood couldn't even protect itself, how could it protect him? Amr ibn al-Jamuh embraced Islam that day. And Muadh smiled, knowing that sometimes the greatest dawah is simply revealing the truth. The house was small, but it pulsed with light. Inside, 2 young men sat cross-legged, copies of Revelation spread before them like treasure maps to eternity. Muadh ibn Jabal and Abdullah ibn Masud, both barely out of their teens, both burning with a hunger to understand every word Allah had revealed. The Prophet had paired them intentionally. You too, he said with that knowing smile, will teach this ummah what I have taught you. They memorized together, debated together, prayed through the night together. But while Ibn Masud became the master of recitation, Muadh became something else entirely. He became the answer. People started coming to their door with questions the way travelers come to a well. Is this transaction permissible? How do we divide the inheritance? What is the ruling on this oath? And while others hesitated, Muadh spoke with a clarity that seemed to come from beyond himself. His answers weren't just correct, they were profound, rooted in principles that unlocked entire categories of law. The Prophet heard about it and smiled wider. The most knowledgeable of my ummah regarding halal and haram is Muadh ibn Jabal. The words spread like wildfire, a teenager, a mufti while the messenger still walked among them. Even Umar ibn al-Khattab, the towering giant of conviction, once gave a ruling in public. Muadh, standing in the back, quietly corrected him. The crowd held its breath. Umar paused, considered, then nodded. The boy is right. Muadh lowered his gaze, but his heart soared. Knowledge wasn't about pride. It was about protecting the ummah from error. The donkey's name was Ufair, and it carried the two greatest hearts in creation. The Prophet sat in front, holding the reins. Muadh sat behind him, his arms wrapped lightly around the messenger's waist, his ear close enough to catch every word that fell like honey. These rides were Muadh's heaven. Away from the crowds, away from the questions, it was just teacher and student, moving slowly through the dusty paths outside Medina. The Prophet would speak softly, as if sharing secrets the angels themselves leaned down to hear. One day, the messenger turned slightly, his voice carrying the weight of something monumental. "O Muadh, do you know what the right of Allah is upon his servants?" Muadh's heart raced. Allah and his messenger know best. The right of Allah upon his servants is that they worship him alone and associate nothing with him. The words settled into Muadh's chest like a key turning in a lock. Then came the second part, even sweeter. And do you know what the right of the servants is upon Allah if they do that? Muadh could barely breathe. Allah and his messenger know best. The right of the servants upon Allah is that he will not punish them. Tears filled Muadh's eyes. This wasn't just theology, it was mercy, it was hope. It was the entire religion distilled into one beautiful promise. He wanted to shout it from every rooftop, to run through Medina proclaiming the good news. But the Prophet said gently, "Do not tell them, or they will rely on it alone." So Muadh kept it close, a jewel in his heart, waiting for the right moment to share the words that could change everything. It happened on an ordinary day, which made it all the more extraordinary. The Prophet reached out and took Muadh's hand, not as a teacher correcting a student, not as a leader instructing a soldier, but as a friend holding a friend. "O Muadh," he said, his eyes locking onto Muadh's with an intensity that seemed to pierce through flesh and bone straight into the soul, "I love you." 3 words, "Wallahi, I love you." Muadh's world stopped. The Prophet of Allah, the beloved of the Creator, the man whose very footsteps would be followed by billions, loved him. A boy with curly hair and a limp. A teenager who still feared he wasn't doing enough. The tears came before Muadh could stop them. The messenger wasn't finished. Never leave off saying after every prayer, "O Allah, help me to remember you, to thank you, and to worship you in the best manner." It was a gift wrapped in a command, a secret to staying close to Allah forever, a rope to hold onto when everything else fell away. Muadh repeated the words through his tears, embedding them into his heart like a seal. "I love you too, Ya Rasulullah," Muadh whispered, his voice breaking, "more than I love myself." The Prophet smiled, that smile that could melt mountains, and said nothing more. He didn't need to. Love wasn't measured in words, but in moments like these, hand in hand, heart to heart, 2 souls recognizing each other across the vast expanse of creation. Muadh would carry that moment to his grave and beyond. Yemen was waiting, and Muadh wasn't ready to leave. But the Prophet had made his decision. "I am sending you to a people of the book," he said, testing his beloved student one final time. What will you judge by? Muadh's voice was steady despite the ache in his chest. By the Book of Allah. And if you find nothing there, then by the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. And if you find nothing there? Muadh paused, then spoke the words that would echo through Islamic jurisprudence forever. I will exert my reasoning and not fall short. The Prophet's face lit up with pride. He struck Muadh's chest gently with his hand. All praise is to Allah who has guided the Messenger of Allah. Yemen wasn't just a mission, it was a test of everything Muadh had learned. The people there worshipped in synagogues and churches. They had their own laws, their own structures. Muadh would have to build a society from scratch, rooted in justice and zakah, balancing mercy with firmness. The Prophet gave him the blueprint. Call them first to Tawhid. If they accept, teach them prayer. If they pray, teach them zakah. Step by step, heart by heart, soul by soul. Don't overwhelm them. Don't compromise the truth. Walk the middle path. Muadh memorized every word, knowing this might be the last time he heard that beloved voice give him guidance. Yemen was far. The journey was dangerous. But he had his orders, and he would fulfill them even if it killed him. The Prophet walked while Muadh rode. It should have been the other way around, but the messenger insisted, his hand resting on the camel's side as they moved slowly toward the edge of Medina. This was the farewell Muadh had been dreading. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the sand. Every step felt like a knife twisting in Muadh's chest. He didn't want to go. He wanted to stay, to serve, to sit at those blessed feet forever, but duty called, and love meant obedience. Then the Prophet spoke, his voice soft but heavy with prophecy. O Muadh, perhaps you will not meet me after this year. Perhaps you will pass by my mosque and my grave. The words shattered Muadh completely. He tried to hold back the tears, but they came in waves, choking him, blinding him. The Prophet, his teacher, his beloved, his entire world was telling him they would never see each other again in this life. Muadh couldn't speak. He could only weep as the camel kept moving forward, carrying him away from the only man he had ever truly loved. The Prophet watched him go, his own eyes glistening, knowing that this parting was necessary, that Muadh's destiny lay beyond the borders of Medina. When Muadh finally turned back one last time, the Prophet raised his hand in a silent blessing. That image, the messenger standing alone in the fading light, would haunt Muadh for the rest of his life. He rode toward Yemen carrying a broken heart and an unbreakable mission. Syria was supposed to be a reward. After Yemen, after the Prophet's death, after the wars of apostasy, Muadh was appointed governor, a position of wealth, power, and influence. But wealth slipped through his fingers like sand. Every dinar that came to him, he gave away. Every dirham distributed. The orphans, the widows, the travelers, the slaves seeking freedom, they all knew where to find Muadh. His door was never closed, his hand never empty for long. He lived like a man who had already detached from this world, who saw money as a test rather than a treasure. His wife finally broke. She stood before him, embarrassed, desperate. Muadh, we don't even have a single dinar for our own household. Just one, please. He looked at her with those same beautiful eyes, now older, now carrying the weight of leadership and loss. If I had kept even one dinar from the night until morning, I would not trust myself. He feared that attachment, that whisper of greed, more than he feared poverty. People called him a one-man ummah because he embodied everything the community should be: generous, just, knowledgeable, fearless. He judged disputes with the same brilliance he once displayed in Medina. He taught Quran in the same house where he once learned it. But at night, alone, he still wept, still accused himself of being too slow, too weak, too insufficient. He gave everything because he knew that this world was a blink and the next was forever. The plague of Amwas came like a thief in the night, stealing the righteous and leaving the living to bury their dead. Muadh watched it take his daughters first, their bright faces fading into stillness. Then his sons, young men with futures that would never arrive. Then his wife, the woman who had stood beside him through Yemen and Syria, through wealth and poverty. He buried them all with his own hands, reciting Quran over each grave, refusing to let grief consume his faith. When his own son, Abdurrahman, lay dying, the boy looked up at his father and said, "Advise me." Muadh's voice was steady, even as his heart bled. "Fear Allah, and know that you cannot escape death, whether you are patient or impatient. So be patient, and you will be rewarded." The boy smiled and closed his eyes for the last time. When the plague finally reached Muadh himself, he was 34 years old. The same age, many great souls seemed to leave this world. His body burned with fever, but his heart burned brighter. He looked at his hands, the same hands the Prophet had once held, and whispered, "O death, you are most welcome, a visitor who comes at a time of great need." Then, with his final breaths, he spoke the words that defined his entire existence. "O Allah, you know that my heart loves you." He died smiling, as if meeting an old friend. The man who would stand 1 degree ahead of all scholars on the day of judgment had gone home, leaving behind a legacy written not in books, but in hearts.